I remember the smell first. Beer, roast chicken gone cold, lemon cleaner, trying to pretend the carpet was new. I had arrived with a bottle of wine and the wrong shoes, which seemed to summarize my position in that house. My brother's place had always been a room where conversations slid past me, where jokes formed their own weather systems I was expected to endure. I stood near the kitchen island and listened to people who shared my last name talk about investments and holidays and the heroic incompetence of delivery services. My nephew, my brother's son, 20 to already convinced the world was a bad bar tab someone else should pay, was on his third drink. He laughed loudly at his own stories, leaned into people's shoulders as if to test which ones would give. I told myself it was fine. I always told myself that. You get older and the effort of objecting begins to feel like work you won't be paid for when it happened. There was no cinematic pause, no hush. He said it quickly, slurred and bright, the way people say things they think are obvious truths. She buys love because she can't earn it. He nodded toward me like he delivered a punchline on cue. Laughter broke out. A cousin snorted. Someone slapped the table. The sound filled the room, confident and easy. It was the kind of ladder that doesn't check who it lands on. I remember noticing how my hands felt empty. I'd set the wine down somewhere. I remember thinking with an odd clarity that this was a room full of adults who could have stopped it and chose not to, that the words themselves were less important than the chorus that followed. I didn't say anything. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at my brother, who was smiling in that exhausted way people do when they're trying to keep the peace by pretending nothing happened. I put on my coat. Someone asked if I was leaving already. I said I wasn't feeling well. That wasn't exactly a lie. Outside, the night had the soft patience of a city that had seen worse things than family dinners. I walked to my car and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel until my breathing remembered how to be normal. I drove home slowly, stopped at red lights even when no one was watching. At home, I fed my cat, changed into old clothes, and washed my face. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, there was a tightening, like a knot being tied carefully, deliberately. I slept. In the morning, the words were still there, but they had lost their sting. They felt like information. I am careful in my work. It's a habit I've earned. My job lives in margins and footnotes, in decisions that don't make the news but decide who gets to stay afloat. It's boring to people who like drama. It's the kind of power that doesn't announce itself. My brother's family had been relying on a contract I oversaw, one of many, routine, due for renewal. I had flagged issues months ago, missing documentation, a casual approach to compliance that had been waved through because, well, family. I had asked for corrections. They hadn't come. That Monday, I reviewed the file again. I noted the dates. I sent a request for formal review to the department that existed precisely to handle things like this. I wrote plainly. I attached what was missing. I did not mention the dinner. I did not mention the words. 2 days passed. 3. On Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was in a meeting. I ignored it. When I checked later, there were 6 missed calls from my brother. A text from his wife, another from an unfamiliar number. I recognized as my nephew's. What's going on? They say the contract is frozen. Can you call me? It's urgent. This is a misunderstanding. The authority intervention came like weather, predictable if you knew how to read the sky. An audit, a temporary suspension pending review. The letter was polite, unmistakable. There were no accusations, just requirements, the kind that don't bend because someone is embarrassed. The next messages were longer. I'm sorry if something was said. He was drunk. You know how he is. We're family. I read them in order, noticing the way the tone shifted from confusion to panic. Apologies that apologized for inconvenience. Offers to talk, to clear the air, to go back to how things were. I didn't respond right away. Not out of spite, out of respect for myself mostly. I wanted to answer without heat. That evening, I took a walk. The neighborhood was quiet. Someone had planted new trees along the sidewalk, thin and hopeful. I thought about how often silence gets misunderstood for weakness, how restraint gets translated as absence. When I finally wrote back, it was brief. The review is standard. I don't control the outcome. I hope you understand. It was true, also incomplete. The best kind of truth. My brother came over the next weekend. He stood in my doorway and looked smaller than I remembered. He talked about stress, about timing, about how unfair things felt. He did not mention his son's words. I did not offer them. At one point, he said, "You could have said something." "I did," I said. "I left." He nodded slowly, as if translating a language he had always pretended not to hear. The contract was eventually terminated, not because of me exactly, because of the things that had always been wrong. The authority letter said so much. It thanked them for their cooperation. It wished them well. The text slowed, then stopped. At the next family gathering, months later, the laughter was quieter. People looked at me differently, not with fear exactly, but with a recalibrated attention. My nephew didn't drink. He didn't speak to me. That was fine. I sat at the table and ate my food. I answered questions about work with neutral sentences. I left at a reasonable hour. On the drive home, I thought about dignity, how it isn't loud, how it doesn't need witnesses. It's a way of moving through the world that refuses to contort itself for rooms that don't deserve the effort. I didn't win anything. I didn't get an apology that meant what it should have. What I got was quieter. The knowledge that when laughter tried to make me small, I had not shrunk. I had simply stepped aside and let the weight of things fall where they were always going to fall. My phone was silent when I pulled into my driveway. I turned it off anyway, went inside and poured myself a glass of water.